Welcome to my channel and welcome to Diane's home. I am today going to, in honor of the Tonys, which I watched last night, give you a quick review of my favorite shows I saw all season. So we're gonna go from like August to July, because that's the theater season in New York. I live in New York, so these are New York shows that I've seen. I saw a couple shows in DC. I have not included them here. One of them I really, really did love. The other one I didn't, so wouldn't have made it anyway. But let's just crack on. Let's just get right into this. I am a theater artist. I'm a theater director and dramaturg. And so most of these are not things that I've worked on, but these are not all Broadway shows. These are just shows that have really stuck with me since I have seen them. And hopefully there's not too much recency bias, although maybe. We'll talk about it. Okay, so the first thing that I want to talk about, one of my all-time favorite shows that I saw this season was a show that I worked on, but I was a PA on it, so I wasn't like artistically engaged with it, so that feels less like a conflict of interest. But it is Galatea by MJ Kaufman, which was in Brooklyn Bridge Park, directed by Sarah Cameron Hughes, mostly self-produced with funding from the Flea and WP, I think, but was produced in Brooklyn Bridge Park. So it was an outdoor show. It was amazing. It was so cool. It was an adaptation of the play by Jonathan Lilly, who was like a Shakespeare contemporary. That I have just become self-conscious that I am incorrect about that man's name, but something like that. So it's an Elizabethan play that is like, if you think Twelfth Night is a weird gender play, like you should read Galatea. It's about ladies who dress up as men and like flee into the woods, and then of course it's an Elizabethan play, so the woods are like magical and gender weird. And it sort of is an extremely trans play, like the original. Like sort of by the end, it's extremely implied that these two people are just gonna like, one of them's now just gonna live their life as a man so that they can be in love. So it's extremely queer, extremely trans. But this play, this version of it, adapted by MJ Kaufman, who is an amazing visionary trans playwright, was just overtly trans non-binary, phenomenal. Almost full, potentially full cast of trans people, about climate change and youth and queerness and like campy. Absolutely delightful, beautifully directed, beautifully performed, beautifully written. Please get your hands on it. And also just like watch what MJ Kaufman does. The next show on my list is, and this is also maybe a conflict of interest. There's a weird thing in the industry because I like know all these people. But this is a play that I saw in December. So there was a bit of a gap. And partially that is because theater tickets have gotten extremely expensive. And so I was having a hard time paying for them. And partially I wasn't loving what I was seeing. So then I was like not really wanting to pay more to see shows. So it's, you know, like a cycle. But so I did see other shows in the time being, but the next show that like has really, really stuck with me is a play called Meat by Robert Leverett, directed by Liza Kowser, at the Tank. And if you don't know about the Tank is a theater in New York. It's an off-Broadway theater where it offers free rehearsal and performance space to artists. And so instead of having to like raise a massive budget in order to like rent space to rehearse and perform, you apply to the Tank, and they do like a wide range of things. They do like one-day workshops, they do long runs, they do a bunch of stuff. They do like theater, and they also do screenings. They have like an audio space. They do like poetry, they do poetry, they do puppetry, they do dance, they do like a bunch of stuff. The Tank is amazing if you are an artist, and they also like split the take with you and like help you pay people. It's amazing. The Tank rocks. But this show, so this was written and directed by friends of mine from college who are a little bit older than me, so friendish-ease from college. People that I knew from college are in it, but it was amazing. It's about it's sort of a campy, I like queer theater. It's sort of a campy like absurdist, futurist play about it's set at like a camp retreat resort place that people go to in order to be infected with the that tick that gives you a meat allergy, and this place doesn't exist, but it's about sort of like all of these people who have come to this resort and all of their different reasons for wanting to develop this meat allergy, and then it like goes spirally and there are aliens. It's really fun. It was extremely fun, and I haven't stopped thinking about it. I love queer theater. It was like so much queerer than I thought it was going to be when I went to see it, which is always extremely exciting. But the performances were phenomenal. The storytelling was really strong, and the dramaturgy was really exciting. So I'm not sure what their plans are for it next, but like if you're in the city, keep an eye out, because that was really very fun. I'm also hopeful that this is going to be like a mix. Like I said, it's not all Broadway, but I'm hopeful it's going to be a mix of like downtown stuff and indie stuff and like off Broadway and not for profit and yada yada yada. So just like a mix of stuff that you see when you're a theater maker and a theater goer in New York City. So that was December, and then the next play was actually also at the Tank, but it was part of the Tank's season. So in addition to their funding other artists, they like have an established season there as well. And this is a play called Modern Swimwear, written by Caitlin Saylor Stevens, directed by, I just keep touching my hair and I'm so sorry. I'm just like looking at it and it's not lying the way I wanted to, but we're just gonna move on. Caitlin Saylor Stevens, directed by Megan Finn, who is the artistic director of the space, who is a woman that I know. I loved it. It is a one-act piece. This is going to talk about a little bit about domestic violence. Just a heads up. I guess I'll put, I forgot that you can do that. I'll put like the timestampy here. This is a piece about a couple inside of a hotel room over the course of the night. She is a swimwear designer. He is like kind of a rich boy. And it's mostly just the two of them. It's mostly a two-hander. There's like another guy who comes in once, but by the end of the piece, he has killed her. And it is so chilling and so fascinating to watch how this relationship devolves and what this relationship dynamic is and what the like power dynamics throughout look like. My threshold for violence against women on stage is extremely low. Like, you have to prove to me you have to prove to me that it's worth it and that it's impactful and it's doing something. And 9 times out of 10, I am uninterested in seeing women hurt on stage. This was so beautifully done and so intricate and so specific, and like the the director described it to me as like such a balancing act throughout the whole play, and it is so intentional and so specific every moment. And I think just like a really compelling exploration of what this kind of violence looks like and where the power dynamics are and can be and how they all interact. And I just like, absolutely floored by this piece. Loved it. Loved everything about it. The performance was amazing. The set was so beautiful, like so visually compelling, with like really bold colors and bold patterns, and like it felt like a hotel, and the like motifs of swimwear and water all throughout. Gorgeous. The next show that is on my list is not a show that I saw until May. So real dry spell. I saw a lot of theater that I hated this season. But I randomly one day entered the lottery to see Six, the musical on Broadway. And then like 20 minutes later got a notification that I got the tickets, which was very exciting. I did not know really anything about the musical except the premise that it is a musical about the 6 wives of Henry VIII all telling their story, and it's sort of it's like a pop rock musical. In the spirit of Hamilton, I think a little bit. Is sort of the vibe. Absolutely loved it. I went in like, okay, it's important for me to see this show because it is an important fixture in the industry at the moment. I am interested in the way that we talk about history on stage. It seems like it's pretty short. It's like 80 minutes. The tickets were cheap and very good. And so I'd like to just sort of go in as like a career development exercise. And I don't know that I've ever had more fun at the theater. I just, start to finish, soup to nuts, absolutely loved it. It was so fun the whole time, and also moving and beautiful. I think that there's some like dramaturgical issues with it, but like whatever, it's recouping on Broadway, so that's not really my business. I loved it. I'm like I'm just the last person to come to this Six party, but I'm here and I'm ready. I like have been singing Sorry Not Sorry in my head for like the past week because I one time said sorry not sorry. Like the way that it worms into your brain, and it's like empowering and empowered and also like complicated. It's like really dealing with some issues, and also is just like really fun and is exploring sort of like how we tell stories from the past. Loved it. Design was exquisite. Performance is exquisite. Just such a romp. Such a beautiful show. Such a delight. So much fun. So if you too have been living under a rock, listen to Six on Spotify. Great. The next show that I saw just a couple weeks ago, and it was called Evelyn Brown, A Diary at La Mama. So this is an off-Broadway experimental theater that has like an amazing, important history within the industry. And this is a play by Maria Irene Fornes, who is one of my all-time favorite playwrights. She was a Cuban-American playwright in the 60s. And she worked like 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, but passed away in the 90s. No, she didn't. She stopped working in the 90s. She is no longer with us. Is just a true star of the off-Broadway theater. An absolute visionary. If you have never heard of Maria Irene Fornes, find her. Read Pfeffer and Her Friends. Read Letters from Cuba. Read The Danube. Read her work. She's phenomenal. But this is a play that is, she actually did not write. She conceived and directed it originally in the 80s, and it had never been done since. And it was directed in this go around by Alice Reagan. And it is the text of the piece is the diary of a woman who was a domestic laborer in the 1900s in New Hampshire. In the early 1900s. And it is, that's what the text is. And it is, from what I can understand it, this production was attempting to recreate a lot of Fornes's original direction, and like really engage with it. And it blew me away. It's two women on stage and it just reciting diary entries. And so many of the diary entries are like, went to the store, bought some butter, set the table, like extremely mundane, but it's such a beautiful meditation on women's work and on labor. Phenomenal. I can't stop thinking about it. I think it permanently altered who I am as an artist. Stunning. Absolutely stunning. And I didn't hear anybody talking about it. Absolutely stunning. Okay. The next, second to last play that's on this list is a play that I just saw. So again, like hopefully recency bias isn't playing its way into it, but I like got some heavy hitters in the last 2 months, which I've also been making like a concerted effort to see more theater, and also I've seen a lot of theater I've hated. But so maybe these are just like standing out by comparison, but like one of my favorite shows I've seen all season, one of my favorite shows I've seen in New York, The Comeuppance by Brandon Jacobs Jenkins. Brandon Jacobs Jenkins is my favorite contemporary playwright. I think that's not bold. I love his work. And Brandon is interested in a lot of the same things I'm interested in as an artist. He's interested in sort of like the stories from the past and how we interact with them and how they shape our lives today and how we can retell them and learn from them, and is like really invested in theater history and historical storytelling. He has his, I think, most famous play is An Octoroon, based on the Octoroon, which An Octoroon is a retelling, a re-examination, a sort of tearing apart of a melodrama from the 1800s called The Octoroon, which is an extremely racist play that he just like has torn apart and stitched back together, and is like really examining how we tell stories and how we tell stories about race and trope, and how we learn from these stories from the past. And like also Brer Rabbit is there. If you haven't read An Octoroon, please do, because it is, I think, like one of the most important pieces in the American theater at the moment. He also wrote one of my favorite ones of his. It's called Everybody, which is a retelling of the medieval play Everyman. I love, this is just like exactly what I want to be doing as a theater artist, but I'm not a playwright. I just think he's like a genius, phenomenal, chaotic, but absolutely brilliant, and like such a gift to the American theater, such a gift to Black theater, such a gift to queer theater, like such a gift. Anyway, the play that I saw of his recently was his third play in his residency at Signature Theater, which is an off-Broadway theater that has these like residencies with playwrights. And this was the third and final show in his residency, and it is kind of impossible to explain to you what The Comeuppance is. It is on paper, it is about a group of friends from high school who have reunited, and they're pre-gaming for their 20th high school reunion. It is extremely a play about death. It is a play in conversation with the pandemic, and in conversation with memory and consequence and growing up. And there's a character of the character death runs throughout the piece. It is 2 hours and 10 minutes, no intermission, which is like ungodly. But I was so compelled the whole way through. I saw it in previews. Apparently, what I have heard is that it just got a lot better in previews, and the way that Brandon works, it like was a big mess. And then over the course of time was rewritten, and there were like days when the actors got like 30 new pages. And so I like definitely saw it in process. The actors called line a couple times. One speech, an actor pulled out a script and read it, but like phenomenal. Directed by Eric Ting, I forgot to mention, who is also a really visionary director who is interested in this sort of like retelling, re-examination of the stories we tell ourselves, and also a genius. I think like a genius pairing, whoever made that decision. Thank you so much. Absolutely iconic. I loved this play. I loved everything about it. It is currently running at Signature Theater, so if you're in New York, Run, Don't Walk. I think it just got extended. I think that Brandon is such a gift to storytelling at the moment. I am not a fan of, I guess that's not maybe a fair way to say it. In the same way that my bar for violence against women to be justified on stage is extremely high, my bar for art that talks about the recent COVID-19 pandemic, the current COVID-19 pandemic, sky high. I need you to have an extremely good reason to be telling me about and engaging with the last 3.5 years of pandemic, because I don't feel like any of us have perspective on it yet. And I am extremely allergic artistically to stories that feel like they are trying to be relevant for relevancy's sake. But this is a play that I think because it is magical realism, the element of realism in that it is set in 2023, I think required it to be engaging with the pandemic, and because it is so invested in conversations around death and grief and mourning and consequence. I think it is one of the best pieces of art that I have seen that is trying to process the collective trauma of the last 3 years, and doing so with like true grace and just an absolute genius. I just love him. It's not a surprise that two of my favorite plays this season have been Maria Irene Fornes and Brandon Jacobs Jenkins. They're my favorite playwrights. But if you're in the city, Run, Don't Walk. I mean, great. And then the final show on my list is a Broadway show. And it is a Broadway show that opened this season. Oh my goodness. She is trendy. Oh my goodness. She got last minute $40 tickets to this show she's been trying to see for 4 months. It is The Sign in Sidney Brustein's Window by Lorraine Hansberry at the James Earl Jones Theater, directed by Annie Kaufman, starring Oscar Isaac and Rachel Brosnahan. I saw it last weekend, this most recent weekend, 2 days ago. And so I am like still in the process of processing this play. It originated in New York off Broadway at BAM, was impossible to get tickets for, and then is it in a like limited run on Broadway. It is the second time this play has been produced on Broadway. It was Lorraine Hansberry, who is famous for being the first Black person to have a play on Broadway. A woman who wrote that play is A Raisin in the Sun from in the 1950s. She died when she was 35 while The Sign in Sidney Brustein's Window was performing on Broadway, and it closed upon her death. And this is the first time it's been back. It is a play about people. It is a play set in the 1960s in the Village, about like that sort of bohemia. It is about it is set in the living room of this apartment of this married couple, Sidney and Iris Brustein. Sidney is Jewish, Iris is not. Their upstore neighbor is a gay playwright. They are campaigning for the reform candidate in the local election. One of their dearest friends is a white passing black man. Iris's sisters are present, and are really engaging with sort of like classism, racism, anti-Semitism. It is a play that, like, at the time it was produced, originally at the time it was written, was a play about the present, and is now currently also a play about the present, 60 years later, and is also a play about the past, and it's a beautiful play about identity and community. And I was about to say it's a play about love, which it is a play about love. It's a play about like how to love a person. You get to watch this like beautifully volatile relationship that these two have, and as they like try to remember and then forget and then relearn how to love each other. There's a kitty in my lap. It's beautiful. It's just like so beautiful. Annie Kaufman has done just like such a beautiful job remembering Lorraine Hansberry, my wife. I love Lorraine Hansberry. I think she was an absolute radical genius. And at the same time trying to negotiate how do we tell these stories from the past, and how do we honor them? I don't know if you've noticed the theme at all in the place that I'm interested in, but truly a beautiful play about community and identity, and community across identity. And only received one Tony Award last night. I've forgotten about the Technical Theater Awards. But like Annie Kaufman was not nominated, which was just like absolutely bananas. It's so beautifully directed. It's so visually compelling. It's so emotional. It like tears you apart. It's so present. Neither Oscar nor Rachel were nominated, which again, I mean, Oscar Isaac, good golly. I think it's like one of the most beautiful things I've seen on Broadway. It was just so compelling. It was so current and so present and so urgent and so essential and beautifully written, beautifully performed, beautifully conceived. I don't know Annie Kaufman, and I need to call her. I like need to know what was going on in her brain and how she found what she found in the piece, even though the piece is perfect. That's also playing though. So if you're in New York, please run, don't walk. I think it's only playing for the next couple weeks, and try to get a $40 ticket, because I had been trying for months. But I feel so lucky that I was able to get that ticket, see that play. I feel like that is another play that I feel like has like cosmically shifted who I am as an artist. I loved it. I think it was doing exactly what revivals need to be doing, which is honoring the play from the past while at the same time making it present and engaging with the text as a collaborator as opposed to the production, which is always what I try to do as an artist, and is what I think is, if you're working with old works, the true mission, and I think is sort of where we can sometimes get lost in it. I loved that play. I loved all of these plays. What is your favorite play you saw this season? It could be a community theater production, a school production, a regional theater production. If you're in New York, what was your favorite thing you saw in the city? What was your favorite thing you made? I want to talk about theater. I love talking about theater. I think that talking about theater continues to remind me why I want to be making it. Seeing good theater continues to remind me why I want to make it. I feel so blessed to be living in this beautiful city with this beautiful art. And I just urge you to see more theater, and let me know what you have seen and what you've loved down in the comments. I'm very excited to talk with you about it. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye.